Go ahead, you say.
Are you ready?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get started. Thanks everyone again for coming today. We've got a lot to go over. Hopefully, a lot to learn and a lot of questions as well.
No question.
Before we get started with the rules, we do want to give you guys a quick update on what was said in terms of the rules modernization project that the USJ is working on. Jean was at the annual meeting last week, and she's got a little bit of an update for us on that. So,
Well, the one that I was concerned about is the one that I dubbed the one inch drop rule. So I went to one of the members of the committee that's writing these and asked her about the 1 inch drop rule. She said, "What rule's that?" I said, "It's the rule where you said that there's no height restriction." I said, "You know they're all going to get down and drop it. Why don't you just have them place it?" And she said, because if a player places it and it won't remain at rest, it immediately rolls. What do? You all know. You replace it.
Yeah.
And then if it won't remain at rest, you start finding a place where it will remain. You could wind up with 2, 3, 4, 7 places.
Mm-hmm.
If you drop it, that's it. Even if you drop it from a ½ an inch, once it's dropped, it's done. The only thing is when you drop, you have those 7 times when you have to re-drop. But when you're dropping a ball from an inch, none of those things is going to happen. So that's why they didn't make it a place. So it's going to be a drop.
And 1 inch is okay.
Hmm?
And 1 inch is okay.
1 inch is okay.
They're taking out the requirement.
Yep. And this is one of the people that's on the committee that's doing the rewrite. So I believe she knows what she's talking about.
Well,
But it sort of makes sense that they don't want to get into all that dropping and redropping.
right.
No,
That's what we should.
No,
They
China
haven't
goes-
made that.
I mean, everybody's not just keep the same.
don't know. Didn't ask her that.
I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. We used to drop.
Was he
for a
done? Was he
couple
done?
of years
Yeah.
ago.
That is showing your age.
This isn't Craig
It
Van
does.
Everybody signed it.
and the other
Didn't answer this?
the other thing that I
Well, I figured it
heard
was
in the
Martin.
meeting and read was that they are going to be releasing a lot of these rules in the next 30 days. They're not going to be obviously in play for anything, but they are going to be released them to the public so everyone can see them, and they're going to get some feedback from golf associations, players, etc. So a lot of these other proposed changes and exactly how they're worded will be out fairly soon, which I think is good for everyone to get a chance to look at them, and hopefully for us as officials and players to be able to see, okay, is this going to make sense, or how is this actually going to play out? So I think it's a good step in the right direction for them. We'll see. Hopefully they'll be able to take out some of the things that we've been talking about in our discussions of some rules that are not 100% necessary in a lot of people's opinion, and we'll see what happens. But we will see a lot more in the next 30 days, and we'll make sure to talk about it when they come out. All right, one last other housekeeping thing. We do have some extra tickets to the West Michigan Golf Show if anyone's interested. We've got a bunch of these, so if anyone is, let me know before you go, or shoot me an email, and we can get those to you or have them at Will Call there. That's coming up this weekend.
This weekend?
Yep, in downtown Grand Rapids. All right, so we'll jump into Rule 15, substituted ball and wrong ball. All right, so the first part here, a player must pull out with the ball, play from the team ground unless the ball is lost, out of bounds, or a player substitutes another ball. And it doesn't matter if that substitution is permitted or not, because if they substitute it, that's going to be the ball that they play out with. And then if a player plays a wrong ball, we'll get to that. They're going to have to go back and fix that. And that's a little bit different situation there. All right. So substituted ball. All right. A player may substitute a ball when proceeding under a rule that permits the player to play, drop, or place another ball in completing the play of the hole. The substitution becomes the ball in play, and I believe we talked about this last week. But as soon as that ball is dropped or placed, that ball becomes in play. the player does substitute a ball, they are allowed to fix it under Rule 20-6. So that eraser rule that we talked about last week does come back into play. So someone could, as long as they don't play that substituted ball, they can put a wrongly substituted ball, or take a wrongly substituted ball out of play, put the right ball back in play, provided they haven't played it. But once the player makes a stroke at an incorrectly substituted ball, he loses the hole in match play, or incurs a penalty of 2 strokes in stroke play. And then once you do make a stroke with that substituted ball, you have to play out the hole with that substituted ball. And now it's important when you're talking about the substituted ball to know the difference in the rules when you're reading them, the difference between a ball and the ball. And I know we talked about this before, but when you are seeing certain rules, they'll say either a ball or the ball. The ball means it has to be the ball. It can't be a free substitution. There's no substitution under that rule. But you will see in some of those rules that we're actually going to talk about today that there's often a phrase that goes something along the lines of, if a ball is to be dropped or placed, under this rule, it will be recoverable, another ball may be substituted. So there is, in some cases, an out if you don't put the ball back in play. But when it's readily available, and we'll go over a few situations and actually have a picture here in a little bit of when you need to make sure it's the ball that's getting substituted or put back in play. And now we talked about here about when that ball is substituted, whether it's correct or not. We're going to continue to play out with that ball. Now, what happens if we have a 1-ball competition, like the Michigan Amateur, for example, and that ball that's substituted is not the same brand or make? What do we do there?
You finish out the hole the way it is, but there's a penalty for playing the wrong ball. You have to change it to next tee.
Right.
Put the correct ball back into play.
Right. So you would need to fix that on the next tee. Now, Gene and I were looking earlier in the appendix under the 1-ball rule. You can actually place the correct ball back in play at any point in time once it's realized. So that is one situation where you could, in theory, not play out the hole with the wrongly substituted ball. But I mean, you could tell the player either way. They could do it at the end of the hole before they start the play of the next hole, which would probably be, I would say, recommended, so we don't run into any issues. But under the rules, they would be able to substitute that correct ball back into play if we have the 1-ball rule in effect. If we don't have the 1-ball rule in effect, once they hit that substituted ball, whether it's right or wrong, they have to keep playing it.
And what's the penalty for that?
The 1-ball,
Still 2.
I believe it's 2 strokes.
2, yeah.
Yeah, where was that in the appendix?
Next hole.
Correct. Yes, it's where was that? It was page.
But once he's on the next tee and ready to play, he can abandon that ball and play any ball under the 1-ball rule. That's that
Yeah.
same make and brand,
Right.
right?
Gene, it's the
It's
156,
page 567.
567, 567.
Or I guess 566. 566, but the important
Right.
paragraph is on
556.
567. And then another, one example of a substituted ball and kind of what happens. I want to show you guys this really quick here. We're going to go to a video. Alright, it's a little fuzzy. I'm gonna try to turn up the volume. Ridiculous. Technology sometimes. Alright. All right. So this was, I'm not exactly sure. I think it might be TPC Sawgrass number 4. It kind of looks like that. But it's Ian Poulter.
Or out of bounds, or you substitute another ball. When Ian Poulter marks and lifts his ball on the putting green, there is nothing in the rules that permit him to substitute another ball for the ball that he has accidentally thrown into the water.
Oh,
If the ball could not be rescued, Poulter would have been penalised 2 strokes for substituting another ball when not permitted to do so, even though he would have had no other options. The ball was quickly located, and Poulter was able to continue without penalty.
wow.
Fortunately, Poulter's saviour
Why do you
had
even
to
throw
go
it in the
home
water?
to
He
change
just
his
out of his hand.
Grabbed it up real quick. The green flipped out of his hand. Marshals get stuck with all the tough jobs.
I don't know, is that a Marshall?
That's exactly why
Well,
the
it looked like some
substituted ball is no longer a wrong ball. Because in the LPGA Tour one time, an LPGA player threw her ball to her caddy, and he missed it, and it went in the water, and they couldn't retrieve it.
That's
And the substituted ball became a wrong ball, and you can't finish. So they made a substitute ball not a wrong ball, about what, 10 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And then this, so this also happened last year at I think TPC Sawgrass as well to Dustin Johnson. He did the same thing by accident. His caddy or someone else jumped in the water and got the ball that time as well. So yeah, crazy things happen out there. A lot of people would probably just think that they could jump in there and grab that or just grab another ball out of your bag, but you could, but it'd be a 2-stroke penalty.
So what do we do? We're playing the 1-ball rule, a player runs out of that brand that he's been playing. And another way else on that he's playing with has the same brand, and they don't have it in the clubhouse.
And he's out.
He's done.
He's done, yeah.
He's done, yeah. What he could borrow.
You can borrow from any player that's on the course.
We had a player like that, what, last year was it? His last ball, we did 9 holes to play, and he only 1 ball left.
It happened to Tiger. He was leading the U.S. Open. And got to 18 at Pebble, 18 is Pebble Beach, the big dog leg left around the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve went in the bag, he had 1 ball. And Tiger was using that brand new ball that was made just for him. Nobody else had any. Caddy left him on the bench in the locker room. And he tried to get Tiger to put his driver away after he'd hit his first one into the water. And that's when the caddy went and found out he had 1 more. He handed him his 2-iron. He said, "Oh, I'm not hitting a 2-iron here." And he hit his driver. Now, you know that they could have gotten those balls out of the locker room.
Sure.
Real quick,
Yeah,
yeah.
they could have done that if they could do it.
But the caddy didn't think.
Well, how would they contact him? You can't use his cell phone on the course.
Oh, sure they can in the USGA.
Really?
Oh, sure.
You can use a cell phone on course. And there's
To
no
call
rule.
somebody?
Yep.
There's no rule against it.
Yep.
You'd also get a rules official, had them call in the clubhouse.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
That's how we found out that the clubhouse didn't
Yeah,
have
that's fine.
the brand this kid
Good
was
brand.
playing.
Yeah.
They were selling that brand.
All right. So as we wait for
I don't
this
see
to
girls like them.
load up
Yeah.
again, the next slide we'll see in a little bit, hopefully. Here is a picture of another situation where we have the original ball and the ball that's substituted that's not permitted. Give it a minute here to load up.
Kyle, you need to bring 3 computers down here.
And either that or don't show any videos, right?
Oh, we like videos.
I know, that was a good funny one, so I figured that was worth it.
It wasn't funny to Ian.
After the fact.
Yeah.
Oh, and then by the way, in that video, we don't require you guys to jump in any hazards and
Okay.
shoot balls as well. So you can be like that rules official that was just stand on the green side there waiting for
Yeah.
yeah.
Somewhere
somewhere
in there.
in there.
I did.
Remember Rule 20? That's a long one, isn't it?
It was. It was last.
All right. So this picture here, now she's taking relief from the cart path there, and her original ball is still on the cart path, and she's dropping with another ball. That ball is easily retrievable. That is the ball she has to put back in play. Right? It'd be different if we were talking about hazard that someone hit into the hazard. That ball may not be retrievable, or as we'll talk about a little bit later, could be a big pool of casual water where it's so deep that you can see the ball, but you don't want to walk in there because you're gonna get all your pants and your shoes all soaking wet. So that would be a situation where it would be reasonable to substitute another ball.
Saw that picture at rural school. That's Lou Blakey's wife.
Is it?
And it was cold. They did it in one take because the ball's on a string. She took her coat off and snapped the picture.
Balls on a string.
All right, so before we get into Rule 15-3, let's just go over quickly the definition of the wrong ball. When I was reading through the decisions there, I didn't look over the definition before, and I was really confused. So I think this is a good start to get an idea of what we're looking at. But the wrong ball is any ball other than the player's ball in play, provisional ball that the player plays, or a ball played under Rule 3-3, or in that situation we talked about last week where if they think they made a serious breach, they go back to play a second ball. That would be Rule 20-7C. All right. The ball in play includes a ball substituted for the ball in play, whether or not the substitution is permitted. The substituted ball becomes a play when it has been dropped or placed as soon as it leaves the hand, right? So there's a difference between substituted ball and the wrong ball. We'll get to that in a little bit here.
And in deference to Medical Country Club, I think our representative should say a wrong ball. It can't be a wrong ball if it came out of your hand. It's improperly substituted, or it's a substituted. That's all what the comment is. It can't be a wrong ball if it came out of your
Are
hand.
you quoting Jim?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a substitute. It has to be, yeah.
Okay. All right, so wrong ball. All right, so in match play, if the player makes a stroke at a wrong ball, it loses the hole. If the wrong, now it's a little unique situation here. If the wrong ball belongs to another player, that the owner must place the ball in the spot in which the wrong ball was first played. Obviously, if they took a divot or something like that, they try to find the closest place that had a same Y there. All right, now this is a really weird situation. Hopefully it doesn't happen too often, but in match play, if a player and opponent exchange balls during the play of a hole, the first player to stroke at a wrong ball loses the hole. When you can't determine which person made the first stroke at a wrong ball, and the hole just gets played out with the balls exchanged. So a very unique situation to match play there. There is one exception. There is no penalty if a player makes a stroke at a ball that's moving in water in a water hazard. And this is any strokes made at a wrong ball moving in water in a water hazard don't count in the player's score. The player must correct their mistake by playing the correct ball and proceeding under the rules. So in that case, they could take Rule 26-1, but there would be no penalty for playing the wrong ball if it was moving in the water hazard. Stroke play.
Wait, before you go on, let me
Yeah.
just ask you. Is there a penalty for whiffing a wrong ball?
Well, the intent
To
was
the
there.
stroke?
but-
Yes,
well,
yes,
it's
it's
stroke.
stroke.
Yeah.
Hey, they're good.
All right. So in stroke play, if the competitor makes the stroke or strokes that are wrong ball, you incur a penalty of 2 strokes. And the competitor, you have to correct your mistake here. Go back and play the correct ball, proceed under the rule. If you don't do that before making a stroke on the next team ground, or in the case of your last hole, before leaving the green and announcing your intention to fix it, you will be disqualified.
So the width is 2.
Hmm?
So the width is 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, strokes made by a competitor with the wrong ball do not count in their score. Again, if the wrong ball belongs to another competitor, the owner must place the ball back on the spot from which the wrong ball was first played. And same exception that we just talked about if the ball's moving in water and a water hazard, there's no penalty there.
And if he's placing it back on the spot from which it was last played, and there's a divot, he places it as close to the spot where it was struck from, where he drops.
It's a good question.
You said you placed it.
I would
Place it as close as.
I would say that you place it.
If the lie is altered, you place as near as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So in case of a divot, he just places it next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you still know that exact spot just isn't the same, right? So
You just can't place the ball on.
right. All right, key decisions in Rule 15, the 15-5, which we'll show you here in a sec. 15/13, 15/14, 15/1, sorry, -1/2.5. All right. All right, so here's a little question for you guys. All right, so here's don't look at the decision and cheat. Try to figure it on your own. But this is the situation here. I'll move this so you guys can see it. This is the situation, and then we're going to say that this happens, and then after this happens, we're going to say that the player goes back, hits a shot in the green, and takes 2 putts. And I want you guys to tell me what his score on the hole was.
It's hard. It's hard to read. Oh.
And I guess the other thing that I'm going to tell you so that you can get the right answer is that the ball B is the ball that the player needs to play out with, right?
Yes.
So take that into consideration. He's going to play that ball, hit it on the green, and take 2 putts. And what do we think his score was, including
7.
penalties?
So when he played out what was his original ball, he the same thing as he hit it on the green with 2 strokes to put it in?
No, he didn't continue to play with so what he did was he noticed that his original ball was not the right
So he
ball.
hit a wrong ball.
So he went back and played ball B. But when he started to play ball B again, he hit it on the green and then took 2 putts.
So you're standing in front of the ball when you're stroking distance.
Yeah, it wasn't a hazard.
no.
It was just that
No.
they searched and didn't find it.
Right.
But then they quit after like 4 minutes. But then so he picked up.
So then you can't continue to play with the
Yes.
original ball.
No.
So-
Right.
So it's a no.
Right.
How about he got it 8? I
He's
guess.
got, what do you
All right,
say?
we got 1 for 7. We got 1 for 8.
He's got a T-ball, right?
Correct.
And he went to the second shot and didn't find it. So he dropped the ball.
Picking up the ball.
So that's 2 plus the penalty stroke. So he's line 3, but he picked that ball up, went back up and played the wrong ball
4 or 5.
onto the green, It's
8
4
and 2
putts
putts.
is 6 and
2 putts.
and 2 for playing the wrong ball.
All right, so let's,
A lot of strokes.
so here's something that,
Just
when
be
we have a really tricky situation like this, a good thing to do is to make a T-bar.
Yeah.
And I'll draw it here so you guys can see. So a T-bar is exactly what it says it is. It's a T-bar, and you'll have your strokes on one side and your penalties on the other side. All right. So the player hits their tee shot, right? So that's one stroke. Okay, and then after a brief search, can't find it, he drops another ball under Rule 27-1, which is stroke distance. Okay, so that's another stroke, but also a penalty stroke too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He finds his original ball. The player lifts ball B. He continues to play with his original ball. So
So is
he
it
Another-
continues to play with his
another
original
penalty.
ball. What is his original ball?
Wrong.
wrong?
It's a wrong ball. So that's two
Two.
strokes penalty, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, now what else did he do? He
Lifted his ball.
He lifted his ball. So is that
That's
No,
that's a one
that's-
stroke penalty, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then he went back and fixed it. So he hit a shot on the green,
Mhm.
right. And then 2 putts.
2 putts.
You got a 9.
So he made a 9.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's not a good 9. I was trying to make it nice, but it's a genius
That's
slash
pretty
9.
good.
It's just as convoluted as this thing here.
Yeah, we'll cross that out.
Yeah, your stroke looks like a 5. There you go. That's a good.
Yay.
All right. Let's see what Chatter's got to say. All right.
What was that?
All right. So as the decision here says, we'll go through, but this kind of goes over the answer there. It doesn't exactly talk about 9 because the decision doesn't assume that the player hit the ball on the green and took 2 putts.
Right.
But those are the types of questions that you'll see on the rules test at rule school that you have to do, and having that T-bar is very helpful. I mean, even when you're on the course too, if you have a situation, this would be one where I'm sure Craig would agree. If we have something crazy like this happen, we would tell the player, we need to sit down and figure this out, because only someone like Jean could go through and be like, oh yeah, 9, like she did this morning when I asked her. Whereas for mere mortals like the rest of us,
I do that T thing.
right?
I've always done.
Yeah.
She's got that teeth thing up here.
Well, there are some players that use an abacus.
Yeah.
More than that.
All right. Any questions about Rule 15? No. All right. I'm gonna get going into 20 here. Or sorry, 24. We're going to have the inevitable pause here to get it up on the screen. Did everyone sign in the sign-in sheet that's here? Yeah.
I just wondered.
All right, so Rule 24 is obstructions. We've got movable obstructions and movable obstructions. So movable will come first. right, so 24-1 movable obstructions. Right? The player may take relief without penalty from a movable obstruction as follows. If the ball does not lie in or on the obstruction may be removed. If the ball moves, it must be replaced and there's no penalty, provided that the movement of the ball is directly attributable to the removal of the obstruction. So we talked about this a few weeks ago when Gene was talking about rakes in or outside of bunkers. So this will be a perfect example of a ball that's resting up against a rake. We would, again, if we think it's going to move, we would mark it, right, Dennis? And then we would move the rake. If the ball moves, put it back, place it back. If not, we take that tee out that we marked it with and we just play on. Okay. Second situation here is if the ball is in or on the obstruction. Okay, the ball may be lifted and the obstruction removed. The ball must be through the green or in a hazard, be dropped, or on the putting green, you'll place it. Okay, and the key is you're gonna drop or place it on the spot as near as possible, directly under the place where the ball was. So a couple examples you might see at a professional tournament, someone sitting with a lawn chair, the ball might be sitting on a lawn chair. That's a movable obstruction. That ball would then be dropped directly at the spot under where it was on that chair after the chair was moved.
Is it recommended to maybe mark underneath to have an idea and with a tee, or just make the assumption that, you know, there's a chair and
I don't think it would hurt in that case. I would probably recommend moving the mark once the obstructions move, so we don't have any interference with it hitting the tee or anything like that. But it's not required. But if you have a large movable obstruction, it might be a good idea because you might not know exactly where it was. The other example, and one that we'll kind of reference throughout 24, is what I like to call the good, bad, and the ugly, a trash can or trash container. So in this case here, the good trash container is going to be one that has a nice clean liner. There's no trash in it. You can reach right in there, grab it, move the barrel, move the trash bin out there, and just drop it. You're good, right? All right, now we'll get to the bad and the ugly a little bit later. All right, so when we do this, the ball can be cleaned and then dropped or placed on the putting green. And when a ball is in motion, an obstruction that might influence the movement of the ball, other than the equipment of any player or the flag stick when attended, must not be moved. Okay? So it's a little bit different when the ball's in motion.
That is such an important sentence, and it's just thrown in there at the end of this rule. There's your authority to lift the flag stick on the putting green so somebody doesn't hit it.
Right. As long as it's being intended.
No, if it's on the ground. That's what it says you can.
Anytime.
Oh, when it's on the ground and not moving it.
Yeah, it says attended, moved.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it could be right on the ground.
And that's the only place it shows up, and it's just a little afterthought. I would highlight that sentence, because if you go to find it, you're going to go look. Where are you going to look? Rule 17. That's not where it is.
Right. So you're saying that
If I remove the flag stick and lie down, you start to putt, I can run over and pick it up, and I'm not going to get a penalty. You used to get a penalty for that.
it's on the quizzes right now, because I just took the quiz yesterday, and that question was on there.
It used to be a two-stroke penalty. If I was just trying to be a good guy, and I got
Right.
2 strokes for it. Now I can do it because this sentence says I can. When a ball is in motion, an obstruction that might influence the movement of the ball other than the equipment of any player or the flag stick when attended, removed, or held up must not be moved. That's the important
but
sentence.
if it's just sitting on the ground, is it attended?
Well,
No.
No.
It's removed.
You
It's
had to
removed.
But it's removed or held up.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, that's
When it says
that's important.
equipment of any player, that includes the player himself. He can
Yeah,
pick up
your
his
own
clubs
Equipment,
Mhm.
your towel, whatever.
while the ball is
For your
moving.
golf
Yes.
bag, you can move it.
Hmm?
Just if it's headed for your golf bag, you can
Yes,
move it.
Yeah.
yes.
Shouldn't have it set on a green.
Sure.
If you had a caddy, he'd be carrying it.
But let's say someone stalls a shot and it's looking like it might hit
Yeah.
the bag. And you're
Yeah,
sitting
that's a
there,
good point.
Exactly.
Right.
you remove it. Or if it was the player's bag and they would get a penalty for it, then have someone to move it for them. All right, now there is a note here. If a ball to be dropped or placed under this rule is not immediately recoverable, another ball may be substituted. So this is the bad trash can situation. So this is when you see that ball in the trash, but there's a lot of nasty stuff in there, and you don't want to put your hand in there and grab it. You know it's there. You don't want to touch it. It could be under some really nasty stuff. It's okay if you substitute another ball in that case. All right, now we're going to move to movable obstructions. This is something that you'll see a lot more frequently on the golf course. All right, so interference by an immovable obstruction occurs when we have interference with the ball, the player's stance, and their area of intended swing. And then also on the putting green, that also includes line of putt when the ball's on the putting green. And so one of those four things, but only the fourth when it's on the putting green. Okay, so they're going to get relief if there's interference from one of those 3/4 things. The procedure, so except when the ball is in a water hazard or lateral water hazard, so you don't get relief in a water hazard or lateral water hazard. You take relief as follows. And the reason that is kind of important, especially for us when we're setting up courses, a lot of times when we're defining hazards, we're going to be careful about what we include in the hazard and what we don't. If there's a fence, so we might want to leave it outside of the hazard or in play because we don't want a player to not be able to get relief from it. Or vice versa, it might create just a rules nightmare by leaving it outside the hazard, so we may include it inside the hazard so it doesn't create a huge rule issue. So there's things to consider when we're setting up and marking a course. And when you're out there working your hole or whatever, there's something to look into. If you do see a fence or a sprinkler head or something inside of a hazard, it's something to be aware of because a lot of people may think that they get relief from that, but if it's inside the hazard, they don't. And their ball is inside the hazard. All right, so through the green, what we're going to do is we're going to lift the ball and drop it. We're going to do that within one club length of and not nearer than the nearest point of relief. And we'll go over the nearest point of relief in a little bit, but the nearest point of relief can't be in a hazard on putting green. And then when that ball first hits the ground or first strikes a part of the course, it needs to not be in a hazard or on a putting green. Or it can't be in a place where there's interference from that immovable obstruction that you're trying to get relief from.
I got a question.
Yep.
On A, at the bottom, it talks about line of play on the green. So if there's a sprinkler head on the green and my line of the putt is rolling over that sprinkler head, I get relief.
Correct. Yep.
If it's in the fringe,
If your ball's in the
for example, at Western, they've got some sprinkler heads that are about that far down,
right.
right? And there's about that much of a drop. I got to play over it. I've got to chip over that, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I keep arguing with people. They say, "Oh no, I get relief." No. Now if I'm standing on it,
That's
in my
Right.
intend to swing, I'm okay.
Right. And I believe that there is a local rule that you can put in effect for a sprinkler head that's within a certain distance of the putting green. So if that is in effect, then you will get relief, but we don't do that.
Okay.
IGA.
And is
So-
that just the PGA?
Well, the LPGA does things like
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 2 feet or something, isn't it?
Yeah, and your ball has to be within 2 feet of the sprinkler head, and the sprinkler head has to be within 2 feet of the green.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Nobody institutes that local rule unless it's all over the place. Because usually it's not going to interfere with your swing because it's recessed. It's
Right.
down. The only thing is you just can't putt over it. Yeah.
Hard to stand on it, too, if you can't.
Well, if you stand on, you're gonna get regular it's intervention.
I'm not
the
sure. If you
Yeah.
Yeah, the RNA.
Kyle and Gene,
Yeah,
back in the, somewhere, I don't have my book in front of me, but it's if the sprinkler heads are two from the green and your ball is 2 club lengths from the sprinkler head is when you get relief, which is a local rule. It describes it back in the back of the rules of the decisions book.
Yeah, it's in,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, no
Just
problem.
want to clarify.
Yeah,
Kyle,
good question. Yeah, go ahead.
it's Charlie Dupree. This weekend, what's his name, who was in the playoff, had on an L-shaped green, and he couldn't go at it because there were sprinkler heads in the fringe.
Webb Simpson.
Webb Simpson. So if there was a local rule, he could have gotten relief even if they were on the fringe.
I don't know the situation
I
well
don't think
enough,
they
but,
had.
No, the ball.
He was on an L-shaped green and couldn't go right at the hole because he would have had to go through the fringe. And in the fringe were 2 sprinkler heads.
Charlie, it's got to be within, the ball has to be within 2 foot of the sprinkler heads, and the sprinkler heads must be within 2 foot of the green. Those
Well,
sprinkler heads that Webb had.
Sprinkler heads were within 2 feet of the green, but I wouldn't say that he was.
Oh, no, and the ball was probably 40 foot away from those 2 sprinkler heads.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Isn't it 2 club lengths versus 2 feet?
we
2
don't.
feet?
we
You
don't-
said 2 feet, he's
Is it 2
thinking
feet or
it's 2
2
club
club
lengths
lengths?
still.
I think Gene said 2.
I don't know. I'm
She's
looking.
What page are you on?
She's in the appendix.
Page 559, obstructions, and movable obstruction close to putting green.
Two club lengths.
Yep, so it is 2 club lengths. Right at the
Yeah, the
bottom.
last paragraph.
But again, we don't do that, so please don't give players relief from that. If you happen to be working a PGA Tour event or an LPGA Tour event,
Go ahead.
go ahead. But don't do it at our events, unless for some reason. I mean, I haven't been to every course that we go to, but maybe there, potentially there could be a course where we go to that. This could be something that we would put into effect, but at least as far as I know, we don't do that. All right. So the nearest point of relief. Okay, so the nearest point of relief is the reference point for taking relief without penalty from the interference by an immovable obstruction, abnormal ground conditions, so casual water, ground under repair, burrowing animal hole, or a wrong putting green. It's a point on the course nearest to where the ball lies. That's not near the hole. And where if the ball were so positioned, no interference by the condition from which relief is sought would exist for the stroke the player would have made from the original position if the condition were not there. So one kind of important thing in this sentence is that those last couple words, if the condition were not there. That's a great question to ask players when they're trying to get relief from, let's say, a cart path. You would want to ask them, what type of shot would you hit if the cart path wasn't there? What would you do if the cart path wasn't there? What would you do if the ground under repair wasn't there? And that will help you determine a few things that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But it's an important question to ask because that determines a lot about how not only how you're going to find your nearest point of relief, but if they're going to be given relief in the first place.
That's what the official did in Jordan Spieth's deal.
Right.
He says, which way would you be going? This wasn't here.
Exactly. You're right. That's a great point.
Yeah, if I can on this,
Sure.
here's an example. There's a cart path runs on the left side of the fairway. It's a right-handed player. The cart path is 4 feet wide. The ball ends up on the right side of the cart path, 1 foot from the right edge. Now, the nearest point of relief for a right-handed golfer would be full relief from the cart path, grounding a club. Let's say he's going to hit that's 54 inches from his heels to the toe of the club. So you end up with almost 5 feet from the edge from the ball to his nearest point of relief if he moves it right. If you move it left, it's only 3 feet. So actually, the nearest point of relief from the ball that would, even though it's on the right half of the cart path, the nearest point of relief is actually to the left of the cart path.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. No, that could definitely happen. It's again, Tom, like you said, it's going to be that point that is the nearest. It's not necessarily the one side of the cart path or one side of a GUR or whatever. It's just whatever's nearest. It could be, in Tom's case, 3 feet to the left, 5 feet to the right, so it's going to be 3 feet. And then a note here: in order to determine the nearest point of relief accurately, the player should, keyword should, use a club with which he would have made his next stroke, if the condition were not there, to simulate the address position, direction of play, and swing for such a stroke. So again, another reason why we want to look at to see if that cart path wasn't there, what would you do? If the player is going to hit a low punch shot with the 4-iron, they're going to try to find the nearest point of relief with the 4-iron, as opposed to maybe, in that new position, they would have 100 yards in and hit a wedge. But if the cart path wasn't there, they would be hitting the 4-iron.
But it says should, not must.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what that means is, if you guys want to go to decision 24-2B/2.
371.
Basically, what that says is that if the player happens to get it right and drop in the right place, they're going to be okay. There's no rule saying that they have to use the club that they're most likely to hit. If they just did the complete wrong thing and took 2 club lengths from the edge of the cart path, but ended up dropping in the right place and dropping the correct way, shoulder height, arm extended, face, they'd be okay. So you don't necessarily have to. It's definitely strongly recommended that they use a club that they're most likely going to hit if the condition wasn't there. But and that's what we would tell people, obviously. But if a player does it incorrectly but ends up dropping in the right place, they're going to be okay.
But the right place could be giving them more in his one club length. So if I use my driver to set up
Right.
and take my relief when I'm going to hit a wedge, I might have picked up
Sure.
6 inches or whatever.
But-
Additional.
Right. But that would be a situation where if your ball first strikes or if your nearest point of relief and then you're where you drop the ball, if it strikes in a place that wasn't within the one club length of your real nearest point of relief, then you got an issue. So let's say that you gain an extra foot
Right.
doing that. If you take a club length from there and you drop right next to your nearest point of relief, chances are that is still going to be within one club length of your real nearest point of relief, and you would still be okay in that
It doesn't
case.
matter because you can roll up to 2 club lengths from the point at which you drop.
Right. Right. You can't.
Right?
In theory, but again, so I mean, basically, you would have your one club length for your nearest point of relief.
Right.
Right. So if you took it with a driver instead of a wedge, your real nearest or your real one club length is actually not
Shorter.
one club length, it's just shorter. So as long as it goes in that shorter range, you're okay. But if it gets
drop it in the
outside
shorter
that,
range.
correct.
There is a true, real nearest point.
Right.
So you can use any club in the world if you want, as long as the ball winds up within that real
Nearest point.
nearest point. Yeah, that's what he's saying.
As long as the ball ends up or
No, it
ends up
first
within one-
strikes the course
As long
Ends
as
up,
they're-
well, yeah,
within that
he has
one
to
club.
drop it within one club length of that real nearest point. Yes.
That's what he's saying, though. It just
Yeah.
says he should use
Well, you should, to make sure you get it in the right place.
Right.
That's
Yep.
all.
But
it
it's a
is.
should and not a must.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
So use whatever you want, as long as you make sure you get the right place.
Yeah, it has to be dropped in the right place. And if it isn't,
That's
then,
really switch.
then you got
It's a
an
little
issue.
swirly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you
That'll
say
probably change.
must, if you say must, then does that mean that your next shot must be with that club too?
No.
No,
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 you
no.
must measure with
Yeah.
that.
What's the measure?
Yeah, you can change clubs. That's fine. You know, you could. There's a good decision in there. I don't remember exactly. It's a nice picture, and it has basically they take relief from the cart path, and then there's a tree in the way after they take relief from the cart path, and they can't go towards the hole. They have to hit out sideways, and then when they hit out sideways, they're staying on the cart path, so they get even further relief. And then where is it?
I think page 380.
But what I meant by must is when you use, if you use the word must in this definition, then I guess my question was, must you then use that club too? If they use the word must.
Oh, okay. That's what you're saying. Yeah. No, it did, but this is just specifically talking about using the club to measure the nearest or
Yeah.
determine
No,
the-
To use
Right,
club's
yeah.
measure to get to their point, so they can use any other.
All right, I'm going to show you guys a quick video here, really quick. And
Page 376.
Mhm, that's what-
376 is the decision there.
Yeah, that's what
Hated that. Always hated that.
All right, so again, the USGA, they have a lot of great resources on their website, a lot of cool videos. Here's one that talks about the nearest point of relief.
The rules permit you to take free relief if your line, stance, or swing are interfered with by things like the cart path, ground under repair, or casual water. If you want to take relief, your first step is to determine the starting point for your relief procedure, the spot called the nearest point of relief. The nearest point of relief is the spot the shortest distance away from where your ball lies, either left up, right up, or behind it, that isn't closer to the hole, and where, if your ball was there, you could make a stroke at it without any interference to your resulting line, stance, and swing. To accurately determine the nearest point of relief, start at your ball and imagine the interference wasn't there. What club, direction of play, and swing will you use? Use that club and duplicate the direction of play and swing in nearby locations, where you are free from all three types of interference. The closest location to your ball's original position that is not nearer the hole is your nearest point of relief. This player is demonstrating the most accurate way to identify closest relief points, left, right, and behind his ball, in order to determine which of them is his nearest point of relief. However, this procedure is not required. When the nearest point of relief is obvious, it's okay to save time by going directly to that spot. The nearest point of relief will not always be the same spot for every player. The nearest point of relief in the cart path for this right-handed player is to the left, because his ball would shift a shorter distance in that direction, but not for this left-handed player. For the same reason, his nearest point of relief is to the right of the cart path. The nearest point of relief in this ground under repair for both right and left-handed players is to the left. But notice, the nearest point of relief is closer to the ball's original position for the right-handed player. Usually, the nearest point of relief will be somewhere to the left or the right of your ball's original position, but occasionally behind it. Sometimes your nearest point of relief will be the spot where your resulting line of play or lie is to your disadvantage. This player would have a much clearer shot to the green from left of the cart path. His nearest point of relief is to the right. If he decides to take free relief from his path, he is not allowed to choose the nicer of the points on either side of the path. He must start at the nearest point of relief, even if it is less than desirable, and drop his ball within one club length of that spot. This player might be better off playing his ball as it lies from the path. For more information, please refer to USGA.org or the rules of golf.
I can-
I did love card.
I could pick that green. That's what you carry the 2-iron for.
Exactly. You cover, you're okay if you break it.
Yeah.
Usually like a 6-iron. Those are the demo clubs. Those are the ones you can get pretty easily. All right, so that was a really good video that they had there. Obviously, they got 12 of those that and I would recommend looking through. But one thing that we didn't really discuss in detail was when we do find that nearest point of relief and we take that one club length, we can use any club in our bag, right? So it doesn't have to be that club that they used to find their nearest point of relief. It can be any club. So a lot of times you'll see a player will take that club, 7-iron, wedge, whatever they're going to hit, and then they'll put that club in the bag, get the driver out, and to get that one club length to be as far as possible.
Very long putter.
Sure.
Still carrying a book.
Do you recommend that they take the head cover off when they use it?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get an advantage because that head cover slide.
That's a good question. And then the other thing too that they alluded to in the video was that it's not the nicest point of relief is not the nearest point of relief always. So that's something to always keep in mind. It's not where they want to put it, but it's the nearest point of relief.
It's kind of like dropping a new ball on the cart path after you've been out of play.
Somewhere in all this dropping, it talks about it. Once you start in a situation measuring with one club, you have to continue measuring with it, and that's true. So in this instance, I like to think of this as determining a nearest point of relief and then measuring the one club length. This is not measuring and measuring, because later you'll find, let's say, if you take 2 club lengths to measure your relief from a water hazard, now, has it rolled 2 club lengths? You're using that same club. Once you start measuring in a situation, you continue with the same club. That's why this is not measuring. This is determining the nearest point of relief. Then you're measuring one area.
Yeah, 'cause there's a decision in there where they measured with the one with the driver, but then
Yep.
the guy wants to use his putter
Yep.
because it keeps him out of.
And it says you can't. You
Right.
just have to continue with the same club. Yeah.
All right. Good timing. All right, so we did through the greens. So through the green, we're going to find our nearest point of relief. One club length from there, not close to the hole. And remember what we talked about last week was the ball can roll closer to the hole. It just can't roll closer to the hole than the nearest point of relief. Right, so the ball could bounce forward, but it can't go past that nearest point of relief. All right, so now we're in a bunker. We talked about this when Gene talked about bunkers, but in bunkers you do get relief. You would lift the ball and you drop it, either without penalty, as stated in the first one. You find your nearest point of relief within 1 club length, but the ball needs to stay inside the bunker. So once we drop inside the bunker, or you could go outside the bunker, keeping the point where the ball lay directly between the hole and the spot on which the ball is dropped, with no limit to how far behind the bunker you go. But if you do that one, you're going to get a penalty stroke. On the putting green, you have the balls on the putting green, and you have an immovable obstruction in your way. I guess it could happen. You don't see a lot of putting greens with sprinkler heads or anything like that on there anymore, but could happen. You would lift the ball, and then you would place it at the nearest point of relief. So the key word there is at. It's on that spot. No 1 club length. It's at that spot. You're going to place it. And then the nearest point of relief could be off the putting green in that case. It's not necessarily guaranteed to be on the putting green, but when your ball starts in the putting green, you're going to place it. if you're taking relief, no matter if you place it on the putting green or off the putting green. And then on a teeing ground, the ball lies in the teeing ground. The player will lift the ball and drop it. And nearest point of relief plus 1 club point.
How do you have interference on the team ground?
Second shot.
Oh, okay. So you're saying the second shot, if the second shot is on the team ground,
If my tee shot hit a tree and comes back and lands on the teeing ground and it's up against
the
a
marker,
sprinkler head.
Yeah.
Didn't used to be there. There was no relief. They added that clause in this and in Rule 25,
so,
just for that circumstance.
so does that take into consideration the markers as well? Because
Well, they're obstructions after the tee shot, they're movable.
movable after the tee shot, so they can pick up the marker and move it
Mhm.
down here.
Hey, Kyle,
Yeah.
I was watching a tournament where there was a ball hit onto the deck of a grandstand. Isn't that kind of like a temporary,
That's a temporary movable obstruction.
but they forced him to hit off the floor?
Off the deck.
Yeah.
So I think in that situation,
did that by choice, I think.
He did it by
It was by
choice.
choice.
Oh, he did it by
Yeah, he
choice?
did it by
By choice.
choice, because usually for that, they'll put in a drop zone, or in Phil's case, they might have had a drop zone. because
Oh,
they're
that
probably
was
so
Phil.
far out of play
Yeah.
that
He was in the grandstands adjacent to the fairway, but
right.
the drop, where the drop was in front of the stand, was all nasty grass. It was all gnarly long
Had
stuff.
a real nice carpet on the.
Yeah, it's, he said, you know, I can hit
A lot of spin on that one.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I didn't remember it.
Yeah.
He chose.
He did
Oh,
make
but
a great,
so
he still did
in
make
that
a great
case,
shot out of there though.
No, he did. Definitely. Yeah, he chose to play it off there, and that's a good. We won't get into the TIOs because we don't really deal with those yet. Maybe in like 10 years, but probably not. But
That's right.
yeah, so TIO is a little bit different, but you can
It takes off.
you could play just like a cart path. You could play off a cart path if you wanted to.
Or a bridge over the water.
Right.
You can actually
Well, you
ground,
can
Trouble.
you can ground your club.
Troubled water.
Yeah, the bridge over troubled waters. Yeah, you can ground your club there.
I did it last year over there.
Yeah.
Hit a layup, I thought, oh, that's pretty good. I kept rolling, rolled right on the bridge, right over the hazard. I hit it off the bridge and
2 or 3.
the par 5, whatever the par 5, it was 5. After the par 5, over there.
5.
Then I hit it on the green from
Good.
from
Par
the
3.
bridge.
All right, so there is one, or I guess a few exceptions to this. So a player may not take relief under this rule, under the immovable obstruction rule, if interference by anything other than an immovable obstruction makes a stroke clearly impractical, or interference by an immovable obstruction would occur only through the use of a clearly unreasonable stroke or an unnecessarily abnormal stance, swing, or direction of play. So there's a couple decisions in there that talk about these situations. We'll show you them in a sec. And now, a couple notes under this rule: if the ball's in a water hazard, no relief from immovable obstruction. If the ball is to be dropped or placed under this rule, is not immediately recoverable. Another ball may be substituted. It's something that we see quite frequently. And then this last one is not very common, but the committee may make a local rule stating that the player must determine the nearest point of relief without crossing over, through, or under the obstruction. This rarely happens, so not something to worry about.
Sounds like a huge drain. According to the other side, can't go through it on the top of it. Yeah.
So here's a couple of pictures of what these situations look like. So you've got a situation here in the first one where the player is taking an abnormal stance to try to get relief from the cart path. And then the second one, you've got the picture of a ball that's clearly not playable. it's lodged in a root there. There's no way that a player could get any club on that to move it. So in these cases, even if they are on a cart path or they have interference from an immovable obstruction, they're not going to get relief. Okay. And a lot of times it may be not always cut and dry like this. It may be something that is a little bit not lodged in a root, or it could be a ball that's directly behind a root, where the root comes up and the root's blocking the forward movement of the ball. So in that case, again, you want to ask that question to the player. Now, what would you do if the cart path, we're talking cart paths, what would you do if the cart path isn't here? And if the player says, if you were standing on grass, I would take an unplayable because I know I can't hit that, you don't get cart path relief. And so here's the decisions. So this first one is actually a decision about a reasonable stance given the situation. So a player is up against the fence, and their only stroke is to be able to hit it left-handed. Because they're up against the fence, they can't make a swing at it right-handed. It would be reasonable for them to make a left-handed stroke. And if they do happen to be standing on the cart path, which I believe in this case, or the immovable obstruction, they will get relief from that. And at that point, at the bottom there, the player may then use a normal right-handed swing for their next stroke. So they can't switch clubs, they can switch stances, everything once they take that relief. But because that original situation was reasonable for them to hit it left-handed, they were able to get relief in that case. As opposed to that picture where she was hitting it left-handed to try to get relief from the carpet, even though it was not reasonable.
Club championship decided that by 1 year for that.
And the next one here is a clearly or an unreasonable situation here where the player is trying to make an abnormal stroke. So a right-hand player's ball is in a poor lie. A nearby immovable obstruction would not interfere with the player's normal right-handed swing, but it would interfere with the left-handed swing. The player says he wishes to make his next stroke left-handed, and since the obstruction would interfere with such stroke, he's entitled to proceed under Rule 24-2B. May the player do this? No, if the only reason for the player to use left-handed stroke is to escape a poor lie, use of an abnormal left-handed stroke is clearly unreasonable, and the player is not entitled to relief. So again, if you ask that question, what would you do if that obstruction of the cart path wasn't there? And let's say they tell you, I would hit it left-handed, and they're a right-handed player, then you just tell them,
No, you wouldn't.
that's crap. I don't believe you. Play the ball. Which people will say because people will know the rule and they'll try to get their way around it. But at the end of the day, it's on us as a rules specialist to be able to say, hey, that's not, no, that's not acceptable. You're not going to get relief from that, or you're not going to be able to take relief from the cart path using a left-handed stance because there's no way that you would ever hit that left-handed.
What if he does have a left-handed club in his bag?
I mean,
he uses it for different shots.
Yeah, but
Sure.
he's got to
I
take
mean-
the shot though after he takes that
it
stand.
wouldn't be, no, he wouldn't necessarily have to take the shot, but I think it would be a case-by-case situation. I mean, if this player does, is ambidextrous and is able to hit shots and they do it frequently, I mean, sure, but I would say chances are that you wouldn't run into a situation like that. But I mean, who's to say that it couldn't happen out there?
But here's where judgment comes in.
Yeah.
Is it the Michigan Amateur, or is it the girls' high school? Yeah.
All right, so ball obstruction not found. And so we're going to start with movable obstruction here. So before we get started with that, though, it's a question of fact whether the ball that has not been found after having been struck towards an obstruction is in the obstruction. Okay, so in order to apply this rule 24-3, we have to have known or virtual certainty. There must be known or virtually certain that the ball is in the obstruction. And if we don't have that certainty, then we need to proceed under 27-1, which is stroke and distance. So a good decision that talks about known or virtual certainty is 26-1/1. That's under the water hazard rule, but still talks about exactly what is said by being known or virtually certain. So I'll put that up. I think I have it here. So here's this one.
What is that number up there? 26?
26-1/1.
It's a decision on virtual certainty.
All right, so I'll go ahead and read it because I think it is important. So, when a ball has been struck towards a water hazard and cannot be found, a player may not assume that his ball is in the water hazard simply because there is a possibility that the ball may be in the water hazard. In order to proceed under Rule 26-1, or in our case, 24-3. 24-3, yes, correct. It must be known or virtually certain that the ball is in the water hazard or in the obstruction in our case. In the absence of knowledge of virtual certainty, we have to play under Rule 20-7. So when a player's ball cannot be found, knowledge must be gained that his ball is in the movable obstruction or in the obstruction in a number of ways. The player's caddy or other members of his group or his match may observe the ball go into the obstruction, or the water hazard in this case. Evidence provided by other reliable witnesses, such as spectators, referee, observers, or other outside agencies, can give this information. And then it is important that all readily accessible information be considered because, for example, the mere fact that the ball has splashed in the water hazard would not always provide knowledge that the ball is in the water hazard. As there is instances when a ball may skip out and come to rest outside of the hazard. Okay, so in absence of the knowledge, if the ball is in the water hazard, Rule 26-1 requires there to be virtual certainty that the player's ball is in the water hazard in order to proceed under this rule. Unlike knowledge, virtual certainty implies some small degree of doubt about the actual location of a ball that has not been found. However, virtual certainty also means that although the ball has not been found, when all readily available information is considered, the conclusion that there is nowhere that the ball could be except in the water hazard, or in our case, the obstruction, will be justified. So a lot of times you hear it is that this known or virtual certainty means that it's 99.9% sure that it's in the water hazard or in the obstruction. Okay, so in determining whether virtual certainty exists, some of the relevant factors in the area of the water hazard or the obstruction in our case to be considered include topography, turf conditions, grass heights, visibility, weather conditions, and proximity of tees, bushes, and abnormal ground conditions. And so the same principles would apply for a ball that may have been moved by an outside agency, a ball that has not been found in an obstruction, which we're talking about, or an abnormal ground condition, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
I just do want to add, you will be challenged by the players out there who will want to take water hazard relief. And you're going to have to defend yourself as to whether or not, so it's pretty important to keep in mind 26, this decision right here, because you'll be asked to defend virtual certainty a lot of times.
You still pretty much putting your hazard lines outside the long junk that surrounds a hazard?
Yeah.
You're still doing that, aren't you? To get rid of a lot of this problem.
Right. Or sometimes you can't avoid high grass around the hazard too. The natural boundaries of the hazard will define where it is.
Right.
If you've got high grass outside that
Yeah.
area, or say a ball is hitting a tree and bounces around, even though the tree is in the hazard, if it's high ground outside the hazard, you're going to need virtual certainty. And anytime a ball strikes a tree, to me, you've lost virtual certainty almost, because it could have bounced anywhere.
Depends on some other things.
True.
But I mean, how far the shot was. But I mean, I would say 99 times out of 100, I would agree with you on that.
Unless you've got a lot of low grounds outside the hazard.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so a ball in a movable obstruction is not found. So this is the what I would say the ugly trash can situation. So we've got a big trash can here, and there's a lot of nasty trash in there, and we've got a spectator standing next to them, and they saw that ball go right in there. But, you know, we don't want to go through there, and it's just, there's a ton of nasty stuff in there. But we have information from that spectator that they saw the ball go in there. We know it's in there. That player can take relief. Now what you need to do, since we don't know exactly where the ball is, we're going to need to find where the ball last crossed the outermost limits of that movable obstruction. So if it was a trash bin like this, we would figure out estimate where it crossed, and that point would be our point of reference. So we would move the trash bin out of the way and then drop it at that point where it last crossed the trash bin in our case.
If the trash bin is attached to a ball thing that's immovable, you still gotta get relief from it, all right? So you take that relief option.
Right, so in that case, it'd be your nearest point of relief, instead of
That's club life.
right. Yep, in the club line. Yep. All right. So talk about this here now. Now we're going to move to the immovable obstruction. So something like Jeff just said. So if we're through the green, again, we're going to find where the ball last crossed the outermost limits of the movable obstruction, and then from that point, they would get, you know, that's going to be their point, one club length from there, and they would drop. You know, I have a situation that happened at a tournament I was at. I wasn't rules officiating. I was just there spectating, and it was at Sea Island on the seaside course there. Any of you have been there? I think it was hole 5. But basically, there was this girl, very good player. She was on the tee. She hits her tee shot right down the middle of the fairway. We see it bounce a couple times. Whatever. We go up there. We get up there. We're looking. We can't find anything. And you know, we walk out there, and there's a hole in the middle of the fairway, probably about the size of a little bit bigger than a golf hole. And you know, we're looking there. I pointed out, again, I'm not the rules official there. I just point out that there is a hole there, and we look all around and still can't find it. And you know, unfortunately, I disagreed with it, but they made her go back to the tee because they didn't have known or virtual certainty, which, you know, I can see the argument being made because it was a small hole. But there were other things to consider, at least I thought. You know, from the tee, we saw the ball bounce. She hit the ball right down the middle. Her normal drive would have been, you know, darn near close to that spot. There was a lot of evidence saying that ball was probably in there. But, you know, then again, I mean, was it 99% sure? I mean, I was pretty sure it was 99% sure, but the rules official wasn't. And the other thing about that situation too is that the rules official that made the ruling was not on site there. It was someone that was calling it in. And so sometimes you're going to get, you know, what actually happened and what is communicated could be two different things. So it's, you know, if you find yourself in a situation like that, obviously, you know, we want to communicate that effectively, but it could have a different outcome based on what you tell the rules official.
She'd play a second ball. She didn't.
I told her to do it. You know, I told her mom to do it, but you know, they didn't want to get into it and whatever. So.
Was the hole real deep? Did they try to probe with a club or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it was going down for.
It was?
Yeah.
I right.
Think, you know, I stuck my hand down there.
Oh
yeah.
Don't just there.
This must have been a girlfriend.
She must have been cute, right?
It's like a 16-year-old girl. I was just out there, so. You know,
And you were 17.
At a former job, sorry to clarify, where I took kids to golf tournaments, and I was just there, so I wasn't there. You know, but I mean, that's one situation there where I would say would be that we would have known or virtual certainty, and some of the factors we used was that we saw the ball bounce, so we knew it didn't plug because we saw it bounce a couple times. Given how far she hits her driver normally, it would have been right around that area. And the fact that she hit it right down the middle of the fairway, that's nowhere else to be seen, and there's really nothing else around it, maybe a bunker, but I mean, it would have rolled in the bunker. So again, I thought she probably should have been able to drop there, but that's not what was communicated to the rules official, and it is what it is.
Yeah, that's like the abnormal links to which they go for woods, right? When he hit on top of the clubhouse that time and the ball bounced off into the cart, and the guy drove off with the cart, they gave him relief from the roof at the nearest point on the outside by the stand so he could hit into the green. And the only way they could track the shot was from the one.
Yeah.
But he was granted, they saw the ball go in, saw it hit on the roof, saw it go off and hit into the cart. And it was service personnel, they were driving the cart away. So they didn't know where the hell the cart went, but the golf ball was on the cart.
Right.
So
No,
they
but
ran it.
wouldn't you have taken the drop from where it went into the cart? Because that was the last place it landed.
Yes.
That's
And
what I would've
know
thought.
where the cart was sitting, so that
But
would be the nearest
they
point.
granted him relief on this side of the clubhouse, on the corner, where it crossed that marker, not where it bounced off of that and into the cart.
No, see, the cart's the last place it went.
But the cart was, when it went into the cart, it's on the back side of the clubhouse.
On the
again.
backside?
So,
Are you sure there wasn't just a drop area there for any ball that went?
Yeah, I mean, was it part of the obstruction?
Yeah,
Part of the-
yeah.
no, the grandstands were 30 yards in front of the thing.
Yeah, that was it. That was at Firestone, and actually the person who drove off with the cart did not know that the ball was in the cart,
Exactly. They had no idea that the ball was in the cart.
and he found it later.
Oh, they found it later.
Yeah, they found it
Well, that's
much
why
later.
they,
You're leaving out part of the story.
yeah.
They still granted him relief on this corner of the clubhouse. So there was a question when they found the ball. He had driven off, so they didn't find it.
Right, because that's what they should do. You're not,
Yeah, but I don't like the relief on this front corner,
that's where it hindered the obstruction.
but you've got the TIO in front of that. So now you're giving him
Well-
site relief because of the TIO and you've got the relief. from the building.
You'd have to draw
Temporary.
But I mean, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the situation right, but if he did benefit from having line of sight relief or line of play relief, that's just good luck, right? I mean, it's not necessarily,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, if the ball is lost in an obstruction or casual water, it's where you last cross the obstruction.
Right.
Casual
Right.
water.
Yeah.
right,
We're last crossed.
So
And then if you have
it's-
even line of sight for a TIO, you get relief from that too, so that's
Yeah,
probably.
TIO gets line of sight.
That was actually, the USGA's had a lot of complaints about the calling in. It's not fair because there are only a few guys in the field that have those TV cameras on. Gonna see this ball on the green move, all that kind of stuff. Their justification is that in just as many cases, because the blimp is there, they find balls that they hit errantly off into the boonies. So they get a break as often as they get something ruled against them. So that's why they think it's fair. Interesting.
It's not 25,000 people who are out there watching.
the people that are watching because they don't show a certain number of people on TV. So they can make the same argument.
Yes,
Possibly.
yes.
All right, what about in a bunker? So in a bunker, again, we're gonna find where the ball last crossed the outermost limits of the obstruction. At that point, nearest point of relief, or that point, one club length drop there, needs to stay within the bunker, or you can go outside the bunker with a one stroke penalty, keeping that point where you're gonna drop it in the flag as far back as you want to go. In a water hazard, we know we don't get relief from removable obstructions in a water hazard, so that's, if you want to take relief, you can, but it's going to be under 26-1 and it'll be a one stroke penalty. On the putting green, we're going to place the ball on that spot where it last crossed the outermost limits. And then penalty for breach of Rule 24, this is our first penalty statement, is lost hole in match play and 2 strokes in stroke play. All right, here's some key decisions for 24.
Just in case. Yeah.
All right, any questions about 24? Rule 24? I'm not sure.
No,
Okay,
I'm not that fast.
that's all right. And so once we go over to 25, a lot of the things in 25 are mirror images of what we just talked about in 24, especially in reference to the last thing that we talked about, ball not found in obstruction as opposed to waiting. So it's going to be essentially the same thing for casual water or any other abnormal ground condition. All right, so rule 25, you have abnormal ground conditions, which are, who wants to tell us what abnormal ground conditions are? What three main things are? Any idea?
A hole made by a burrowing animal.
Hole made by a burrowing animal, casual water, ground. Perfect. All right, and then we'll also talk about the embedded ball rule and the wrong putting rule. All right, the 25-1 interference. Interference by abnormal ground condition again occurs when we have interference with the ball, player's stance, or the area of his or her intended swing. And then also on the putting green, just like under Rule 24, there is going to be line of putt interference if the ball is on the putting green. Okay, but if it's not on the putting green, there is no line of play really. All right, note here, the committee may make a local rule stating that interference by an abnormal ground condition with the player's stance is deemed not to be of itself interference under this rule. So a couple situations that you'll see frequently that we use, side seams. A lot of times you won't get relief from side seams if your stance, but only for live ball.
Both the balls, you know, lies on.
And yet, in or on the seam, you would be able to get relief from that. Other situation, you see GUR or ground under repair on a putting green. A lot of times that is just going to be for live ball only, not for stance, because those are small areas and not materially affected if your stance is on there. All right, so relief. So again, we have the same condition here, except when the ball is in a water hazard or a lateral water hazard. Player may take relief from interference by an abnormal ground condition. So if you have if your ball is in a water hazard or lateral water hazard, you're not going to get relief from an abnormal ground condition. A burrowing animal hole or something like that inside of a hazard, you would not get relief. Through the green, again, you're going to lift the ball, you're going to drop it. There's no penalty within one club length of your nearest point of relief. And the ball must first strike part of the course at a spot that avoids interference by the condition, by the ground under repair or a casual water or a burrowing animal hole, and is not in a hazard or on putting. In a bunker, talk about this with bunkers, but again, you're going to lift it, and then you have to drop it. Okay, and then it has to stay, this first one basically says that it has to stay inside the bunker. However, there's a little bit of a wrinkle here with the abnormal ground condition in that if complete relief is impossible, so a bunker that is completely filled with casual water, to be an example, you will drop the ball as near as possible to the spot where the ball lay, but not near the hole on a part of the course in the bunker that affords maximum available relief. And that maximum available relief. that decision there kind of talks a little bit more about maximum available relief. We'll go over that in a second here.
We had one in the Michigan Senior Open where you could pull it out of the bunker, drop in a drop zone, because the bunker was completely full.
Right.
And they couldn't get it out. So you hit in the bunker, you got relief outside of the bunker.
Right. And in that case, if it's not defined as ground under repair to the green, it'd be a one-stroke penalty.
No, well, no, because they were, you couldn't play out.
Right. So what
So
they did is
they were not giving a one-stroke penalty.
right. So they
made it
defined it
local.
as
Through the green.
Through the green.
And that's another important thing to consider when you're out there as well. If we do start seeing some casual water build up in bunkers, and we do get in a situation where we may have started the round, but there's rain going during the round, and we see water building up, if there is a bunker that might not have full or any relief or a drainage, and you're going to want to let someone know so we can try to start moving some of that water around so that players are able to drop in that bunker. Because if we started the round, we can't declare a bunker GUR in the middle of the round. So that would be something to keep in mind when you guys are out there. If you do see accumulation in a bunker of casual water in a spot that wouldn't allow relief to stay in the bunker. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So if there's casual water in the middle of the bunker, that's fine, because the player is still going to be able to drop not close to the hole in the bunker. But if it's near the back of the bunker and it's flat and it's upslope like this, and all the flat area here is completely, or it's not completely, but it's getting to be completely, we want to let someone know so we can attempt to start pushing some of that water out, or putting it somewhere else, so that we don't have to
play in the water.
Exactly.
Fine, they can win the water.
All right, so then if a player is entitled to take relief outside the bunker, but they would get a one-stroke penalty for that. And we're keeping that point where the ball lay directly between the hole and the spot where they're going to drop. And in the unfortunate situation that we wouldn't declare a bunker completely covered in water as GUR, and they had to go outside, then they would get a one-stroke penalty for that. But we wouldn't want that to happen. If we knew it was filled before, we would mark it as ground under repair to the green. Or if it was starting to fill up, we would try to do our best to not make that a situation here. But the player can elect to take the one-stroke penalty if they want. And then on the putting green, we're going to lift the ball and place it at the nearest point of relief. No one club length here, just at the nearest point of relief. And the nearest point of relief again may be off the putting green. Okay, so this decision 25-1B/5, explanation of maximum available relief. So in a bunker, completely covered by casual water, is the place providing maximum available relief, a spot which will provide the most relief for both lie and stance, or just lie? The answer, the term applies to both lie and stance. The spot providing maximum available relief might be such that the ball will be in shallower water than the player's feet after he takes his stance, or vice versa. So when we're trying to find maximum available relief, we're just trying to find the spot where in this case, the water is the shallowest.
You went from 4 inches to 1.
Right, exactly.
Or 8 to 4.
Yeah, 8 to 4.
Yeah.
Try and get out of there. Gee, what about, I've got acorn shards that are run over by a mower and embedded in the green.
Mm-hmm. If
Those-
it's solidly embedded, you can't do anything.
Exactly. So if it's on your line of putt,
Mm-hmm.
the only way to get relief is to,
Chip over.
well, that or you take a penalty, move the ball, correct?
You could declare it unplayable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you have
And just
your
take a
options.
penalty and just normal options for an unplayable line.
Mm-hmm.
So could you say that again?
Yeah, I was just, it's unusual, but you see it occasionally where you have acorn shards that a mower's run over and they're embedded in the green. So they're no longer a loose impediment, it's now embedded. So if it's on your line of putt, your only option is either to play it or take an unplayable lie and move it under the unplayable rule. But you can't, if they're embedded, you can't dig them out.
Right.
You're still.
All right, and the last thing here on the team ground, if the ball lies in the team ground of the player, must lift the ball and drop it. Again, at that nearest point of relief. Within 1 club length there. And just like the other rules that we talked about today, the ball may be clean when lifted under Rule 25-1B. And now the exception. A player may not take relief. Again, it's the same exception we saw in 24. The player may not take relief under this rule if interference by anything other than an abnormal ground condition makes the stroke clearly impractical, or interference by an abnormal ground condition would occur only through the use of a clearly unreasonable stroke or an unnecessarily abnormal stance. So again, we ask the question, what would you do if the ground under repair, casual water, wasn't there? And that would help determine if they are going to get relief in fact or not. All right. Note 1, if the ball is in a water hazard again, we're not going to get relief from an abnormal ground condition in the lateral water hazard. If they want relief, they can take it under 26-1, 1 stroke penalty there. All right, so very similar to Rule 24, when a ball is goes towards an abnormal ground condition, but it's not found, we need to have that known or virtual certainty again that the ball is in the abnormal ground condition. If we do have that knowledge or virtual certainty, then the player can take relief using that that place where the ball last crossed the outermost limit of either the casual water, ground repair, or a burrowing animal hole. Right. So again, that decision for and this one, this decision here actually talks about a situation where we don't have a virtual certainty. We'll show that in a sec here, but just go through them all again. You got through the green again. If you have that virtual certainty, you're going to drop the ball here. Take at that last at that spot where it last crossed the outermost limits. There's that point plus 1 club length. In a bunker, the same, but the ball needs to stay in the bunker. And then in a water hazard, we know that we can't get relief from the abnormal ground condition in a water hazard. And then on the putting green, we're going to place it at that spot where it last crossed the outermost limit of the abnormal ground condition. So decision 25-1C/1. An area of casual water preceded by high rough is in a hollow not visible from the tee. The ball driven into this area is not found. The ball may be in the casual water or it may be in the high rough. May the player treat the ball as being in the casual water. No, in such circumstances, it is neither known nor virtually certain that the ball is in the casual water. The player may not proceed under Rule 25-1C. They need to go back under 27-1 and use stroke of distance there. So again, we're looking at those factors that Craig was talking about earlier, things like trees, or in this case, high rough, conditions around the casual water or the abnormal obstruction, to determine whether we have that virtual certainty or not. Another example could be if there's a big puddle of casual water and the ball goes in there and you see a splash, from the tee, it's in there, but the casual water may be this deep, and it could be really muddy in there. You know it's in there because you saw the splash, and there's looking else around the water. There's nowhere it could skip out or anything like that. It's in there. You can find the outermost point where it last cross that casual water, and then take your one club length from there. And then here's a visual of kind of what that looks like. So this just clarifies, and that line there is the flight of the ball, and BU is that point where it last cross the margin of the casual water there.
Kyle?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in casual water, you don't take the nearest relief, you take the place where it last crossed?
Well, it just depends.
You can't see it.
If the ball's not found, but you have known or virtual certainty, then you're gonna take that point B here in this picture. But
Okay, so that implies if you don't know exactly where the ball is.
right. If you know where the ball is, you're gonna take your nearest point of relief, one club length from there.
Even if you can't get it. So if you can
Right.
see it in 8
Just
inches
see
of
it.
water and you want to walk in and get it, you can take the nearest point of relief
Exactly.
from that cross.
Right.
Overflow.
Yeah. From the spot where the ball is.
Right.
In that case, where you can see it, you just it's so
can't
deep you don't
reach
want to
it.
go get it. Yeah. So that
Good work.
right. Whereas you would do what this picture's showing if you know it's in there, but you don't know exactly where it is. All right, embedded ball rule. So we got into this fairly well last week, talking about Plum Hollow a lot, which was fun. But again, just to go over it, player's ball is embedded in any closely known area through the green. Okay, so if that's the case, the ball can be lifted, cleaned, and dropped. And again, what you want to tell the player is you want to try to drop it right back in that hole. And like we talked about last week, if it goes back in that hole where it was embedded in some pitch mark, they're going to get another drop, a redrop. So they don't have to worry about that happening or being stuck in the same situation. So just try to tell them to drop it as close as possible to that hole. And then when the ball when first dropped, must strike part of the course through the green.
Okay. So I think I've learned something on this. That because I had somebody approach me and say, did they change the ruling on embedded ball? Because it used to be only in closely known areas, which was basically the fairway, right?
That's
But
right.
the appendix now creates the local rule where it's all over the golf course.
Yep, agree.
Right.
Which is what we use.
Yeah, through the green. So
Through the green.
Did you cover the exceptions?
we're going to go over them.
Okay.
So the note one here, a ball is embedded when it's in its own pitch mark. We talked about this last week, but it has to be its own pitch mark. And if we're not sure, like we were in Plum Hollow, whose pitch mark it was, if we're not sure, then we can't assume that the ball is embedded in this case. And then, so in its own pitch mark, and part of the ball is below the level of the ground, and the ball doesn't have to necessarily touch the soil, but it has to be below the level of the ground in its own pitch mark. And to your point there, Dan, it's in any closely known area, so it could be the fairway, but any part of the course that's cut to fairway height or less. So it could be fringe, path from the tee box to the fairway, any grass that's cut to that length.
Okay, we don't use close to known though.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So in note 3,
Okay.
which we do use, we put in the local rule that allows it to be anywhere through the green. So as long as it's through the green, they get embedded ball relief. So it could be in the rough.
Does everybody use that now?
I would say the majority of them.
USGA events, PGA events.
The reason that it's not in there is because the RNA does not
Recognize it.
they don't use it. So it's kind of geared towards that when they were merging the rules or when they're doing it together.
So that's really more of a US deal than it is a.
Right.
I think it's probably every place but the RNA.
Yeah. Exactly. So they don't. strict by the book. If it was just a USGA rule book, there wouldn't be a need for a local rule. There would just be that. But because it's a combined book between RMA,
Why don't we just come up with our own?
well,
So much easier.
we used to have it, but
Used to have that, but now
Just
they're trying to
go the
go
other
they
way.
wanted to move it together because they want everything to be
Let
one
Trump
wide,
handle
one
it, and
thing.
we'll be separate pretty soon.
worldwide.
It could be. It could be. There's benefits and there's downsides to both sides for sure.
All right, so
Same.
do we have any courses where we would run into the possibility that the ball was embedded in the sandy area?
Yeah, I'm not 100% positive around here, but I do have an example of a course that I was at, and what Dan is referencing for everyone on page 557 on the appendix. There's two exceptions to this embedded ball rule. And the first one is embedded in the sandy area through the green. So the example that I have, it's not here. I was in South Carolina at Key Island and the Ocean Course. We were doing a tournament there, and the kid's ball was embedded in the sand on number 18, which is right up against the ocean, in sand in a sandy area, not in a hazard or anything. If it was in a hazard, they wouldn't get relief from it anyways. But he was embedded in a sandy area. He wanted relief. We told him no, he couldn't have it because of that exception there.
We have waste areas that are not bunkers. That would be a sandy area through the green.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Do you get relief?
You'd get relief for, you would not get relief for an embedded ball because that's one of the exceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in my last summer, we had two bunkers that were declared waste areas
Where?
at Eagle Eye.
At Eagle Eye. Okay, there you go.
Waste bunkers.
What's it?
2 bunkers at Eagle Eye that were declared waste
Yeah, the one
areas.
with the
So
water
you would not
Oh,
get
yeah.
embedded ball relief in those
We had two
bunkers.
that were-
But it's,
13 was one of them.
but it's the other exception that can come into play.
Right, and then the other exception, again, goes back to what we've been talking about before, where we have that clearly unreasonable stance, or it's clearly impractical for them to play the shot. So that could be a case where, let's say the ball is in an area and we don't have the through the green and the ball is embedded, and it's so dug in there. Chances are they're not going to be able to hit out of that. So they would take an unplayable there, and they wouldn't. Is that kind of what it's gearing towards, or what?
Tiger wound up getting a penalty for this.
Yeah,
His
and
ball was embedded, but it was under a bush, totally unplayable because of the bush.
Right.
And he said it's embedded. They gave him embedded ball. Really, and you're not entitled to it.
Right.
Kyle, I'm sorry. One other question. On all these local rules, does a club have to take a specific action? I mean, who ultimately makes the local rule official at a club?
Yeah, so it's the club that can do it. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I mean, I would say that the majority of clubs would either post something in the locker room or near the tee, saying that these are going to be the local rules. Sometimes if it's widespread enough, like the embedded ball rule, they may put it on their scorecard. They may send out some email communication to their members saying this is going to be a local rule. I'm not entirely sure how that's on the club level, but I would guess that between those
I would
areas,
say
that's
it's
kind of how
between
it's
the
done.
pros and the golf committees that kind of make the determinations if they do it. And then I know, like in tournaments, when they put out the rule sheet,
Right.
it'll be addressed on those.
I have one question on number 8 at Muskegon Country Club. It's a short par 4, and I was spotting down there. A fella hit a tee shot, bullet. It hits the fairway, and then it hit that embankment that's in front of the green. Now, a lot of balls roll up there and get stuck in that high grass. However, his ball got stuck in somebody's old pitch mark that was actually bare ground and embedded in there. I did not give him a drop on that because it was not his own pitch mark. It was, however, embedded in the side of that,
Hill.
yeah, that hill. It's a 90 degree.
Yeah, Tom, Jeff had a good question. How did you determine that pitch mark was not his?
I saw the ball hit the fairway and then go into the bank. I witnessed it.
Right.
So it didn't actually go into the side of the bank on the fly?
Right.
No.
Oh, okay. I thought, when you first said that, I thought it went in on the fly.
And then
No, had it gone in on the fly, I would have.
Yeah.
But hit once. But it still was embedded.
I had the woman who drove her ball directly into the ground on an upslope at Indianwood and wanted relief because it was certainly in her pitch mark.
Yeah.
But it was never airborne.
Right.
It was never airborne.
That's right.
Never took flight. So it's
Really?
an
So
unplayable
she
line.
didn't get relief.
There's a decision in there.
It has to be in the air at some point to have a pitch
It
mark.
was from the tee to the ground.
No, it's her second shot.
Oh, second shot. Okay. Okay.
Digs it even farther.
In other words, I went.
Where does it say it has to be in the air?
Let's find.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's
You had to ask.
Oh, it's gonna be under 25 too, isn't it? Or isn't it?
25-2/6, page 410.
There you go.
all right. So last bit of the day, last bit of what we're probably going to do today, but the wrong putting green. All right, so a wrong putting green is any green other than the green being played on the hole that you're on. So it could be a putting green of another hole, like we talked about last week. It could be a double putting green that we split in half that we don't want play going on while you're on one side of the putting green. And it also could be a practice putting green. So Forest Acres, a lot of you guys have been out there, but they have a practice putting green out in the middle between holes 4, 5, 13, and 17 or 16 there. That would be a wrong putting green. So you have interference from a wrong putting green when the ball is on the wrong putting green. Your stance or your swing is not of itself interference under this rule. So in this one, it's only ball. And then you can't play from a wrong putting green, so you have to take relief. You must take relief, and you're going to do it. You do that. Find your nearest point of relief off the wrong putting green, and take one club length from there. No close to the hole. Ball must first strike a part of the course, not on the putting green, and not in the hazard. All right.
They have a video of somebody playing one off of the fringe, standing on the green, playing from the fringe, and the ball's not considered on the green, so
Right.
they had to play it from the fringe.
Right. Yep. And oftentimes, I know I've done this when I'm taking relief from a wrong putting green. I'm trying to drop it on the fringe, right? Because I mean, it's either the fringe or it's going to be some tall up, more than likely. So you're going to try to get it to be on the fringe, and then you're going to have to, in my case, you're going to have to pick up the divot that was sprayed all over the green,
Right.
Which is no fun. But yeah,
We got mandatory relief on 17.
They just had a,
Right, 17 on the horseshoe green that's got the 3 levels.
Oh, yeah.
If you're on the lower tier on the right, you're on the green, you must take it off the green to chip to the upper tier. You can't. If you decide to chip, you can't chip from the green.
interference is only if the ball. So if the ball is on the fringe and you're standing on the green, you don't have interference by a wrong putting green.
Right.
So the nearest point of relief, when you're determining that, you could still have your feet on the putting green.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
Kyle,
Yeah.
in a piece of double greens, you said
Sure.
you decide where the center is?
Yeah, so if we have double green, there's a couple things we can do. We can leave it as it is. The other thing we can do is we can define, where the green starts and where it stops, I guess, from each side. So what we've done is use irrigation flags, and we put them on opposite sides of the putting green, and that imaginary line between those 2 points would be the dividing point of the green. Or in other cases, there's, we have it here at the GAM, but in other cases that I've seen, they put stakes there. Some places they'll put dots, like a white dot or a blue dot to mark that. So there's lots of ways you can do it, but that's the way you would define it.
Do we have many?
I think this year we did it at the Moors, on 18.
In the past, with U of M, number
U of M,
six.
so-
Yeah.
U of M.
Six.
Mhm.
Sure, do U of M when we had the women's
that's-
over there, so we marked that as a wrong green.
St. Clair River, there's a double green there.
Is there?
It's not called that anymore.
Right. But yeah, so it does happen, but not a lot. All right, penalty, playing from the wrong putting green, and match play, loss of hole, stroke play, 2 strokes.
That's only if you play it.
Correct. And that, you get free relief from that.
But interestingly enough, your stroke counts that you play off that +2.
Really?
Yeah. You don't redo and do it right. Your stroke counts. Let's say it's your second stroke. That counts. So you're now line 4.
Oh.
All right, key decisions here for 25.
Kyle, I've got to go. Thanks so much.
All right, sounds great. We're actually finished for the day too. So thanks, Charles. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we didn't quite get to Rule 23, but it's a really quick one. We'll take care of that next week.
Phone number or email.
Next week, we also will cover, hopefully, or we'll cover as much as we can, but Rule 26, 28, 21, and 22. So water hazards, ball unplayable, 26, 28, 21, and 22. 21 is cleaning ball, 22 is ball assisting or interfering with one another. So thanks again, everyone. Great session. Hope to see you guys next week.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Kyle.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.